Hello, everyone, and welcome to RHAP's coverage of Survivor 48 for Survivor Global. I'm your host, Shannon Guss, remembering which franchise of Survivor I am covering, here to talk about the Double Boot, the Split Tribal Council, episode 7 of Survivor 48. And to do that, we used to call it the Global Stockwatch crossover. The Stockwatch isn't really happening, but we continue the trend of that. We kind of, we keep our traditions going, much like the new era of Survivor. And with me, I have the great Taran Armstrong. Taran, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, maybe we could just call it the Survivor Global, I guess like Twitch streaming
That's terrible.
crossover. That's the majority of my Survivor coverage nowadays is
Great
that I just
marketing.
watch the episodes live on Twitch and now also YouTube. So
Yeah, well, okay, well, that's not good marketing. Not like 0 points, but yeah, just Taran as the guest is kind of the
mm,
vibe. And I was like, I'm gonna have Taran on for the split tribal. I knew how to book it weeks in advance because I knew this would be the split tribal. Well, as soon as they announced Murgatory, I'm like, that's the split tribal. So I shouldn't have done that though, because my thought was there'll be two tribal councils, at least one will be interesting. But
mm.
actually, I think if we look back at the trends, unlikely, unlikely, and then not achieved.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, like the first vote or two when they have all of the players able to like properly vote at the merge, I think is usually the best tribal. Like there's usually one like vibe setting vote that happens, and I feel like we still haven't really gotten it yet because there's been too much interference from all of the other stuff that's happening.
Yeah, maybe I was thinking about this. Maybe the show assumes that, something will be set. And to be fair, Murgatory doesn't even set it in like hard lines. Like Murgatory sets like clear people on the bottom with like a mass alliance most of the time. But then maybe the show assumes whatever is set, whether it's something mass and boring or like a line, will have to play out for a couple of votes. So they rush through that in a split tribal council to kind of like clear out the people on the bottom and make people flip sooner. I feel like maybe I'm giving them too much credit because I don't think that they realize. Like we spoke about this last week with Murgatory, is like all of the ways that Murgatory is incentivizing people to be boring, and so we see here even David is using like, oh well, you want to be able to make the jury, like just sit tight, and like with Murgatory actually making it to the merge, and then where I said like you want to be careful to have big numbers for a split tribal. Then when you're at the split tribal, you have to play that out to its natural conclusion, not piss anyone off who you're not even at the same beach with. Like it becomes this whole cyclical thing. So I don't know that they know that all of that is happening. So I think maybe I'm giving too much credit to be like, they assume that like they've had a table setting vote at Purgatory, that'll run down, let's just run it down quicker. I think that they think that like these types of twists will shake things up in a way that historically is just incredibly untrue.
Yeah, I mean, and I think kind of the issue is that like things were already shaken up when they brought them to the merge in the first place, right? Like this is an entirely new group of people that need to now figure out how they're going to interact and what relationships are going to form and what alliances are going to come together and what kind of power structure is going to be built. And it's like, okay, let's shake up the snow globe and see where things land. But before things can land, it's mergatory. Oh, it's different. Half of you are sometimes immune, and whatever. And it's like, okay, now you're gonna almost make the merge. Here we go. Oh, but no, we're shaking it again because now it's split tribal is two people, and it's like we haven't actually. You're not shaking anything. There's nothing to shake yet. It's still being shaken.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, I think that we are somewhat to blame. They're a lot to blame. But I think that we are somewhat to blame because of how much we hate stagnancy. Like the reaction
Mm.
to these last two episodes, which I understand. I feel like it's an upsetting boot order for many, many different reasons. I mean, from a representation reason, from a character reason, from the fact that, like, yes, these two last episodes were snoozy, all very bleak, none of it good. Very upset for me to lose Say and Cedric. I'm devastated about losing both of them. No regrets on the many Chisy points that both of them got. But I think that the reaction is like, this is the worst season of all time. And it's like, we have to show production that we are okay with a little bit of stagnancy, because I think their fear is that if they ever allow it to be slightly stagnant, that people will be mad, which they are, and people will not watch, which, I mean, maybe the casuals wouldn't, but like, we're still going to watch. But my point is that, like, that's why they keep shaking up the snow globe. And as we know, when things are always shaken up, people like cling to the familiar, and people need big numbers to try and like work against twists that might screw them up, as we've seen through these last episodes and the history of this type of format. So I think that if we show them, like, the stagnancy actually has to be okay. We have to be okay with people getting a run on. I think the obviously for me frustrating thing is that the twists actually are promoting stagnancy. It's like, if that just happens to happen, that's strategy sometimes. Like, that's Survivor. This is clearly an unscripted show where, like, even today alone, so many narratives just left. Just Say and Cedric never coming back together. Say and Mary, Cedric and Star. So many of, like, the best dynamics in the show just wiped without even a goodbye most of the time. Truly terrible for the narrative. This is unscripted TV. Sometimes there might be things that are boring. We have to be okay with that. But I think what the issue is like, yes, when the twists are frustrating enough and contributing to that in ways production might not be aware of.
Yeah, and something that I've talked about is just like, in my memory at least, some of my favorite Survivor episodes of all time, at least reliably, are the merge episodes. Because, like, no matter what was happening in a season, the merge episode was the first time all of the players were interacting with each other. And that was the time, again, where, like, there were all kinds of new possibilities for dynamics and relationships and alliances. And getting to see all of the different, like, it was kind of, the merge is kind of like the Avengers of Survivor seasons, where it's like all of these main characters from, like, the different tribes that you were watching are now either teaming up or facing off. And that's, like, such a fun time. And that's the time that I want to spend the most amount of time at camp, getting to see all of that stuff happen. And lately, with the new era, I feel like the opposite has happened, where now these merge episodes have reliably become some of my least favorite episodes, because instead of getting to see all of the new dynamics play out, I'm spending even more of the episode than normal on the multiple challenges that they have to run for the mergatory thing. And now the multiple, like, tribal council segments where we're talking about various analogies for things, in the dual boot episode. And that's all time that is not spent at camp with all of the people there together, figuring out how they want to play the game. And that's just frustrating for me as a viewer.
I kind of feel like it's more like Captain America Civil War than the Avengers, because they're facing
Yeah.
off against each other. I also think, like, this episode would be if, like, two really major characters who are in a franchise together were separated into different movies, died in those movies, and never came back in Say and Cedric. Like, I'm trying to think if it was like Wanda and Vision, yeah, go to, like, a completely different movie and they just never get to say goodbye. And that would never happen in scripted TV, because that is terrible from a narrative perspective. And that's what we got today, which was so incredibly depressing. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you that this is like a low point of the season, and I should have realized that when I was scheduling you. But I'm going away in a couple of weeks, and part of me kind of wants it to stay boring so I have less FOMO from podcasting. And another big part of me is like, I should be in Europe now. Like, that should be scheduling my holidays, Australian Survivor aside, over these kind of snoozy weeks. But there's a lot to talk about still, I'm sure, which we will find. But yeah, I mean, it's not good. I mean, if you look back at the split tribals, even, whether there's a double boot or not, it is often people on the bottom, and it's something that we'll look at here for people who are technically in the middle, like a Chrissy and a Star. As we know, we could talk about in the middle of, like, they're kind of like the top of the bottom of this, like, onion group, and they know parts of that which we can talk about, and they still kind of can't make this flip when there should be an opportunity against someone like an Eva here who has an idol, and it's not even it's so frustratingly, that's not even the conversation. It's Say versus Mitch. It's like, you need each other. So I think that is, like, the really frustrating part of that conversation. And if you look back at, like, the history of these split tribals, like, even like Tiana or Rachel last time was, like, people are going to pick off people on the bottom. I think, like, Soda went, but I feel like Nami were, like, itching to split on each other. That might be one of the biggest flips we've had recently. And then I think you have to go all the way back to, like, 43, where James went, and that was a power shift. But that was, like, again, two tribals after Murgatory. So at the point where, like, the dynamics have been set and people might know when they want to make a flip, maybe then they take, like, something of an opportunity if it's there. Maybe that's what Star and Chrissy would do if this was in, like, a couple of tribal councils time. But now it's like, there's no clear line from Murgatory. Everything's so mass, everything's so communal that they're hoping probably for the best. And the scariest part of all is if you make the flip, maybe you win the battle and lose the war. Like, you're coming back to a sure minority. Like, any majority vote in the split tribal is going to be a minority in the whole tribe, right? Because it's a majority of a plurality of the half. So if you're coming back, if they're coming back and they've won the vote, 4 of them, say, and fractures aside, Mitch, Say, Star, and Chrissy, blindside Eva. Huge vote. Coming back to 4 of 10 though. So do they know if Cedric will be there wanting to work with them? They don't know. Will Mary want to be there? They can't talk to her. So why, we can talk about whether they should have, but why wage a battle that you might then put yourself in more danger? You might unify a group that was otherwise going to crack in the Milk Shields Alliance that I'm describing, the Milk Ship Alliance that I titled last week. They maybe were good at crack in a couple of weeks, and now they're more unified against you. Now they're like, oh, we better shore up. We need each other. So it becomes a very, very tricky thing for people to make a flip, knowing that the numbers they are flipping with, they can't assure a majority without clearing it with the other side.
Yeah, I mean, you take out the wrong person, and all you've potentially really done is some of the dirty work for the majority. By picking off Eva in this instance, you're removing an idol from the board that they now don't have to worry about. You're taking out Joe's number one, so now he's freed up to link up with somebody else and make them feel more comfortable in the majority. Like, there are a lot of potential downsides to this if you go back to a world where on the other side, Shaheen doesn't get voted out, and instead it is that majority line still there. In the same way that, like, if Shaheen had been in that spot and you take out Shaheen, similarly, now all of a sudden Kyle and Camilla scheming to betray the alliance to take out Shaheen. We don't even have to do it anymore. We don't have to do any of that. So that's exactly what we needed to have done for us. Thank you so much. Now we are free to vote you out. So it does require knowledge of the dynamics for what kind of move you are capable of making, and knowledge of the dynamics requires the dynamics existing and being set in place. And that's tough when it just happened and there hasn't really even been a full proper merge vote yet. And so, yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to talk about that for Star and Chrissy, because Star and Chrissy are technically swing votes here, and not swing votes between Mitch and Say. Oh my god, this was killing me. And by the way, the fact that they were like, we should get rid of Mitch because on both sides, because he's strong. The Joe of it being like, he's strong and he has a good story. I'm like, he should have an invitation to your alliance. What are we doing? What was the point of the honor and integrity alliance? Like, it was kind of like the No Homers Club, like honor and integrity for some, but not for Mitch. Mitch is a threat for all the things that are combining us against each other. So it was frustrating in the way it was delivered, because that's their whole premise. I don't even agree with the premise, but for the premise that they are doing, it's then also hypocritical. By the way, my many pet peeves, Taran, only continue to grow. And then I also felt like for Chrissy and Star, who are the swing votes here, they're like, we should get rid of Mitch because he's good at the challenges. He's the only one who will beat the people on the top. Please don't take out your one weapon, your one strong weapon against them, so that they're going to just take up all the immunity. I think you can target other people when they have immunities, but they're going to block up all the power, and that is bad. So to look at it from a Chrissy and Star's perspective, now you may say this is all fan fiction because they don't know that there's a big alliance. They don't know how much trouble they're in. That's clearly true. They're like, if they're smart, they'll take out Shaheen. You're talking about a group that is all of those people. Like, they're definitely not taking out Shaheen, and that just shows how little they know. However, they do both say things in this episode which makes me realize you should know the general sentiment. Star is like, I want to take out the strong people. I'm like, great, let's talk about that. Not Mitch. Not Mitch. That's the one strong person you need. Everyone else, let's talk about it. Chrissy is a tribal council, and she's like, I can't just do the strong thing. I need to, find another way, because that's not me. Chrissy, yes, but don't say the quiet part loud in tribal council. Now they might target you. Don't tell them that. Tell me that in confessional, and then do something about it behind the scenes. So the fact that Chrissy knows that this is a bad pathway for her on general sentiment, and they both are like, maybe we should target the strong people. Like, yeah, I think maybe something we can talk about could be done about that for the two of them. And I wouldn't recommend just like an evil villain in a movie, like telling that part out loud at a tribal council, but I would recommend maybe looking into doing something about it that's not voting out Mitch.
Well, I mean, the thing about, and this is part of why I don't usually like tribal council for the show a lot of the
Yes.
time, which is that, like, is she even being truthful at tribal council, right? Like, usually what
it's accurate for her.
Right, but like usually what somebody says at tribal council is like the opposite of what they mean, because like if Chrissy feels like she is in like an alliance or like some kind of, if she's saying like maybe we should target the strong people, as a
Right.
decoy for the fact that they're actually voting out Say and not Mitch, the strong guy. Like that kind of makes sense for why she might say something like that in that moment, versus like exposing her entire play style philosophy. And I think that you leave it in there because it fits in with the themes of the season that they're trying to present as well, which is like the strong versus weak thing that they've all been touching on a lot.
Yeah, that's like every
I do
Australian
think
Survivor
that she
season, by the
probably.
way. Strong v
What's
weak
that?
is the theme. Every season of Australian Survivor is the theme is actually strong v weak. Literally every single season. So yeah, we're used to that here. But then the
Mhm.
weak people and the Braids tribe, etc., are also insanely strong. So that's Australian Survivor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it is something that happens on a lot of seasons of Big Brother too, where like, especially later seasons of Big Brother, more modern seasons, when the competitions have been very unequal in terms of like the ability to win them.
Yes.
You usually get the same kinds of people or the same people in general just winning a bunch of the competitions, and very naturally that separates people out into like the strong and the weak, the valuable and the useless, and the ways in which that like clearly influences how you value people in the game, both for players and for viewers sometimes, and how that influences not only how they play the game, but also like how they see their own morality in it, where like they have this sort of manifest destiny for themselves of like, we are the conquerors, we are the ones winning the stuff, we are the strong ones, therefore it is our right, our moral right to dominate over the weaker players, and we deserve it more. And if they do anything to shake this up, if they lie to us and break the natural order of things, then
Yeah.
that is terrible for them. We play with honor and integrity because playing with honor and integrity reinforces the structure that keeps us in power. And we will make some small white lies here and there, but those aren't as bad as the ones that would cause a revolution in the power structure.
Also, because
Those
you're
are the
lying to
really
people
bad
who
lies.
aren't important and they're not human.
Exactly.
So there, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, I think people, and this is annoying people so much, which is super fair. People aren't in the trenches, okay? You cover Big Brother, you do that every year. I cover Australian Survivor, okay? So we've been in the trenches of the whole honor and integrity and value and who deserves what and who has meaning, and it is painful. Yeah, of course, it's definitely there in my list of 50 pet peeves, and I think rapidly expanding. It's probably getting closer to 100. I really need to send you my list, but I think that yeah, I think that the when Chrissy is talking about it, if it's a lie, which as you said, like tribal council is all theater, which is why a few years ago we finally uttered the words the tribal council can be boring, and now it's like a cold take. We don't used to say that even a few years ago, but now, yeah, is Chrissy lying about that? Um, I wouldn't. The reason I thought it was true is because like that actually isn't Mitch. I mean, maybe it's like maybe it's the way that the Honor and Integrity Alliance sees Mitch. It's like he's like again like he's such a problem. He's so strong. He has a story. Joe, are you looking in a mirror? Like what is wrong with you? But maybe that's how they see themselves. But I do think that like very openly David has been the one championing that, and like Joe probably has openly championed that. I think like the people at the top have openly kind of made that clear, which they're allowed to do because they set the tone, because that is, as you said, I think well said, the natural order of things. And I think when Chrissy talks out against that, like it's the way she talks about it is about like coming out against a power structure, not just like poor lowly Mitch. Although,
Mm-hmm.
yes, as we know, such a problem, so strong, such a story. But also, yeah, I think that she is talking about something that's been kind of like an open mentality or approach or like value system given in tribal councils and probably beyond by the people who are genuinely on the top. So if she's lying about it, it's really painful because it's like it could make you a target. Like you shouldn't tell the truth about it. What would be the point of lying about it? You know, and if you're telling the truth, like none of that is good. But I think that it should get into her brain to be like, this is actually a problem. Like what she's saying makes total logical sense. Just don't tell them. And now that's why we can try and look at her decision, because it should be based on the logic and merit and knowledge of knowing these people are at the top saying those things, and that isn't you. You know, she's in with Siva. We've seen her be in with Kyle, Camilla, and David. Like that's what was her four personal lines that we know. Certainly not even Mitch. But if that's what she's seeing, and she's seeing these other bonds, then she should know enough to not say it, but to do something about it.
I mean, it's hard to say because I think Chrissy is one of the people we've seen the least of in terms of her actual thought process and what's happening with her game on the show. But I think other interpretations I could take from it are like, maybe the way she sees it is less so like, hey, I'm calling out Joe right here and Eva for like, hey, I don't think just because you guys are strong players doesn't mean that you should just, I don't, doesn't mean we shouldn't target you. And perhaps more so like, hey, just because you see other people as strong players, like maybe a David, doesn't mean you have to go with them. You could come with us instead, sort of thing. But again, it's hard to really get into her head, quite frankly, because I really don't know much about Chrissy in general.
Hey, she has war confessionals and some people got while getting to the end of this entire Australian Survivor season, okay? So again, things are different the way we're doing it in Australian Survivor. But look, I think that if that's what she's saying, it's like, come with us, like, sure. Don't vote those people out. Like then you have to make the coalition of the people on the bottom. Now, I'm not saying that they should necessarily do that. I honestly think it is very marginal for the reasons previously stated, which is like you will never come back to a majority. What you will come back to is Say, who Chrissy has received a vote from and has not liked at all. So you're keeping Say in the game. Mitch, who she also still doesn't want to work with and was kind of put together with on the swap tribe and wasn't with at original Siva. Is when she had the choice of who to work with on Siva, she did not choose Mitch. She chose the people who are in the strong alliance. She chose Kyle and Camilla and David. So Mitch, Say, Star, who she seems to be working pretty well with. We don't know much about that relationship herself. Maybe Cedric, who she has worked with in the past, very likely to go home, as they're saying correctly. Maybe Mary, which I highly, highly doubt. And that's the six. If they have, oh, I mean, again, and they're probably not likely, so that's the five. Five would be enough because Mitch has a blocker vote. But then that includes Mary, which they probably don't have. So I think actually I want to talk about how David has maintained Mary and how Mary's done a good job too of really being like a proxy to the strong group here, because I think she is actually really, really key. But they can't guarantee anything. They can't solidify anything, but they can take a shot. I don't know. It's such a tweener for me in terms of like you will make them angry and they will have the power to get you. Someone like Chrissy who could maybe, try and like get through the people on the bottom and they take out like a Mitch before her and they've taken out a Cedric and she's trying to like make sure she to be the last one standing, which can be an okay spot, but it's super, super passive and you're relying on them splitting versus taking a shot and then maybe they unite against you. Maybe you just upend everything into chaos, or maybe more likely when threatened, people only, as we've seen with the threat of randomness, people only kind of consolidate more. So the more I talk about it, I'm like, I think I got in my head that they could do it. At first I was like, definitely no. On the rewatch, I was like, do it. You're talking about the issue. But now I'm just like, they have nothing, because I think this like onion alliance of the Milkship Alliance has really done so well in having like such a good core. They definitely have like a Camilla. They have all the people on the outer. They have people clearly on the bottom. Like they just have so many numbers, and the show has obviously helped with help them maintain. They've done a very good job themselves, but obviously even the twists lend themselves to people wanting to like cling to this mass vote. So I just think it's yeah, maybe there was nothing there. Do you see anything there for them, or am I? It's just there's nothing there,
I
is
just
there?
I think it's tough. I mean, and
Yeah.
I think part of what reinforces the social structure of how this typically goes, which is like the big majority of all the cool kids, strong people, is
Deserving
that
ones.
deserving ones, they chose each other, and everyone else is just the people that weren't chosen, as Big Brother might call them, the leftovers, which sometimes are able to come together in a power alliance, but the majority of the time it's just the people that are left over, and that can be a real ragtag group of people, and trying to form any kind of coalition with them to win power, it could be very tricky when you have say, and say Cedric, trying to get them to work together on the same team as Mary and all of these other potential outsiders. And Say is casting rogue votes for Cedric to get her lick in. It's like, can we really? Is this a group that we can take control with, or will this immediately fall apart? And those people who are clearly like hapless to some degree in terms of like building power in a group of themselves, are not the people who are likely going to take the fall for this. It's going to be the organizers, the ones that tried to make this power move with their votes, that are going to be taken down first. And so Yeah, I just think it's really tough, especially when you know that Eva has an idol, and that makes it even harder. And like, like where do you even go from here? You can't even talk to the other side to get a sense of like if they'd be okay with it. Ideally, if you make this kind of a move, you do it with some of the people who are in power because they're willing to cut one of their own, and then that gives you some leverage in the future. Like there's just different ways this could go, but in the spot where they are with the information they have and the ability to communicate to the people that they are able to communicate with, it's just, I think, a tough ask. And I certainly don't think I could fault them for playing it safe here.
Yeah, I mean, as annoying as this Milk Chip Alliance is, it also is very good. Like, I think we really have to credit how well they've done to maintain the structure, at least through 2 episodes and 3 votes. To the point where, to be fair, like we're saying that should they flip on everyone, like not only can they not do that, but even when trying to internally flip, like even when Kyle in that alliance with Camilla is looking to target Shaheen, even he needs to bring in David. That's the level of kind of control here where it's like you can't even flip on the alliance without the say of the rest of the alliance. So I think that they have done a really good job because, as you're saying, it's such a good point that of these leftovers, what do they have in common? Well, they're not the people on top in an alliance they don't know exist. And I've definitely spent a lot of this Australian Survivor season being like, you guys are on the bottom, just work together, do the thing, come over the top. In structures they can't see because they don't know who's getting the most confessionals in a way we can see. Maybe they should be able to, but again, their read on that, it has not been clear. And what do they have in common? Like, not a lot. They literally are just the people that have been left out for being probably, especially in this, as you're saying, in this like cool kids kind of structure, for being kind of a mess, like definitely like with Say, and like their relationships to each other are actively negative compared to what are like the best relationships we see that everyone has. Now you said like Say had to get her looking with Cedric. Hey, that is Cedric's closest alliance. Okay, so that actually is true. That was a complex bond, but it was a true bond. But was it simple? No, but that was his closest alliance. But if you look at Chrissy again, like her allies are like these Siva people who are like largely probably also like a David and a Kyle and a Camilla. If you look at Star, I think Eva did a really good job having someone like Star, like, coming back with someone like Star, because she could try and make a move like this and try and pull people over. And I feel like she's at least like someone who will make big moves. I mean, she'll give her idol away. Maybe that was kind of more of a personal thing to do, but Star, I feel like Star's not going to take this lying down. Like if she felt like she needed another pass, so I think they've done well to kind of consolidate Star with Lagi. Mitch also was trying, like, who were the people in Siva when they were trying to get across? David and Kyle. Those are Mitch's relationships. So even Cedric, I mean, Cedric we've seen with Star. Cedric, we can talk about Cedric. Cedric hasn't known anyone, but like they don't have good relationships with necessarily each other. And if anything, it's all been chaos through these people who have had to go to multiple tribal councils when it was like a 2-1-1 when, say, Cedric, Mitch, and Chrissy, who all could be in this group, were together. Like, chaos, not like unified, not compared to people who've barely ever had to vote at all, let alone together and create these fractures. So yeah, it's just not there, is it? I thought I watched the first time, I thought maybe, and then the second time I was like, do it, and then I was like, no. Even then I was like, I don't know. It kind of feels like the kind of thing where you might like throw a rock at the bully, and then the bully is just like gonna like run after you and just like crush you, and that is probably how that would go. So they have to wait for a passive flip that is going to kind of complete, passive for them, are completely on the terms of the power people with each other, I'm sure, and then hope it just pray to not be on the bottom of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, especially in the new era of Survivor, the meta of it is usually it usually gets quickly to let's cut off the head of the strongest person, and so you do have options for people who are on the outs, but it does require survival to get to that point, and then the ability to take the opportunity that's given to you when presented. And as we've seen, there's also an archetype of player in the new era that is the person who tries to capitalize on those opportunities and just consistently fails. So it's not exactly an easy road, no matter what you do, but there is usually an opportunity there, although this season seems to be particularly interested in, can strong players not do that to each other?
Yeah, except
And
Mitch.
so we'll see if it happens.
Not Mitch though. Mitch isn't included
Yeah.
in
Well,
that
he's
because he's
not
a
a
target.
strong player. He's
Yeah, I mean
just
he's
a
very
he's just a
he's
strong player,
yeah, he's
not a
just a strong
strong
player,
player.
not a strong
Yeah.
player, right? Yeah, no, but that makes
Yeah.
him a huge target because that's very
Exactly.
threatening.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many things here that was so unfortunate. I feel like I'm so upset about Say and Cedric leaving. I saw more for Cedric than I think a lot of people did. I was like, he has had like cool, full control and knowledge in like insanely fractured tribal councils, and that alone impressed me. Even though I didn't agree with him voting out Justin over after voting for Say twice, obviously that was insane. He has described it as like quite a personal thing. Very kind. He's a very kind, clearly like a good human being, better than me. See, I wouldn't do that. I would vote Say out at that point once I've voted her for twice. But like, good for him being a good human. Not probably the right strategic move, but I saw a lot of what Cedric was doing, and I'm really upset about how this went for Cedric because I actually feel like if anyone was kind of screwed by this, like it's a very unfortunate group for Cedric. I think like definitely Say is below him. I think Mitch is below him. So I think like not having either of them as an out really sucked. Like he's like trying to not upend anything. He's going to the people in power being like, I just want to like, play the game and, being so congenial. So I feel really bad for him. And the group that he's with is, the group that ends up dooming him at the point where he, is in like a 5-1 vote with nothing to play. Should have played a shot in the dark. So he didn't think about that. That was the one thing. But other than that, he was with someone who did play her shot in the dark. He had 1 in 6, was meant to be voted out when Cedric did have control. So that's obviously nothing, and you can't really blame him to the point where she was saved by a shot in the dark. And then 4 people he's never met, never spent time with on tribal, and not even like Star, who we saw he connected with so effortlessly within a day in the last episode. Star's not even there to vouch for him. Like he has all the people on the top, Shaheen, Camilla, Kyle, and David. He hasn't known them for more than a few days. So I just feel like for him especially, I feel like he just ran out of runway after playing more Survivor in the first like 2 weeks of this game than some people in the new era probably will ever play. Some people in the season will not play as much Survivor, getting very far in the game than Cedric had to play in these 2 weeks.
I think the edit Cedric got was wild. Like I think I noticed early on that he seemed to be the central point of his tribe,
Yes.
making pretty much every decision, and yet he was so clearly not the focus of the tribe. And obviously Say was for many reasons, but like we never even really got like the I felt like I needed to read between the lines to see that he was in control of everything
Yeah.
and making those decisions. The show never seemed to explicitly tell me that, and that's just kind of a strange thing to do. Usually, that the person in that position is a main character of the early parts of the season, that gets built up and then eventually knocked down. But for whatever reason, Cedric was always just kind of downplayed, a bit low key, which is kind of his personality. So it does make a little bit of sense. He also kind of goes out unceremoniously here. If you know
Yeah.
that there's an episode where you lose both Say and Cedric, maybe you don't want it to feel like, oh, we just lost 2 of our biggest and most fun characters, or like whatever. So maybe you downplay him for that reason. Maybe if I'm being hopeful for my draft team, Shaheen, maybe you want to downplay Cedric because you don't want to be rooting for Shaheen to go home here. But I do feel like he probably should have had a bigger edit overall. I think that he, like in terms of him as an individual player, I think that his impact on the season was greater than I think that was shown.
Yeah, I mean, well, he's as you said, like I think Say is an outlier because she had like historic confessional counts, and Say is so entertaining. She made me laugh out loud so many, even her ex interview, and also just in the episode, she was like, "That was a little dramatic." I love Say as well, and I understand why she got so many confessionals, but I do agree. I think it's the fact it's like he won Vula, but Vula is gone. Like Vula is pretty much extinct. Mary is like the last, and she's never been Vula. You know what I mean? She was technically voted out of Vula. So the Vula stronghold is not something that's going to matter to the second half of the season, but he did win that. He was in control and he had all the power in that group. It doesn't really matter to the end game of the season. So if he's not like hugely popping from a TV perspective, even though I really enjoyed him, and he's against like this huge character and Say, I do think it kind of makes sense that way, that the structure doesn't need to be told to us in a way that is so important. Like the way we need to know that like Carl and David are at the center of Siva. Like we know that, and that's going to play out actually more importantly for a tribe that never went to tribal council than Vula, which couldn't stop going to tribal council. So I do think that's a part of it. I do think, it was sad enough to lose both of them. If he has more of an edit, it probably makes it a little bit worse. But yeah, I think for him, this was just such an unfortunate spot because I really felt like the Shaheen plan like never had legs. Like this is why I'm like, really play a show in the dark, because even watching it on TV, it's like, yeah, that's what they're gonna do. They're gonna blow up this alliance that they made an episode ago that's doing really well, that's been really impressive. He went through Carl's bag. You knew that when you aligned with him and you've bonded with him since. Like, it's fine. It's a really, like, it's very much future Carl and Camilla's problem. And you're really gonna do this without Joe and Eva, which gives you the opportunity, but also all of the anger. Let's start the war now. Let's do it. So like no one is doing that. Like never, and not only are they not doing it, they definitely shouldn't. The reason that we're
Mm.
saying should other people maybe explode their game to try and take a shot is because this alliance is so powerful and so good for you. So you certainly shouldn't implode your own power structure. So I was just like, and never at any point that I feel like the Shaheen plan had like a leg, not only legs, but like it didn't even have one leg at all.
I mean, I believed that Kyle wanted it to happen, and I believe that because he went out on a limb and threw
A
out the
leg.
lie,
Yeah.
which I think is a mistake. I think that like when you make a move like that, he just like left dangling evidence of his malfeasance out in the world without following through on the shot that Shaheen may find out. And that's just like an unforced error. It's just like, I think that you don't do that unless you're serious about making the move. And the fact that it doesn't go through means that like you made a mistake. Like you've really you've introduced some opportunity for bad things to happen to you. But I agree. I think that it wasn't really the move in the first place. Like taking out Shaheen. Do I think Shaheen is a threat? Yeah, especially given the content we got in the beginning of the episode, where like a lot of people seem to want to come to him, who are on the. He does seem like the kind of person who could have, or maybe still can, pull together some of the outsiders to make some kind of move. And not only is he capable of it, but I think he's willing to do something like that. I think Kyle has the right read on him in that sense. But I think that taking a sort of like half effort attempt at creating a lie, and I don't even think you needed to create a lie. I think that you can just tell David, yeah, he looked through my bag when I was at
Yeah,
that
the bag
camp.
thing
Like
is, yeah, that is suspicious.
that
I thought the
feels
same.
sketchy and not really, I think, in line with how David would want to play the game.
No.
And they lied to us a bunch when we were on that in that camp, and we took out Thomas, but we got by the skin of our teeth. And I think that he's still like super locked in with Joe and Eva, and that means that we need to be careful and we need to be thinking about when we might want to take a shot at some point. Should we do it now? I just don't think coming up with a lie about him having an idol makes a ton of sense, especially because now the fingerprints are like lead right back to you. We might not be seeing all of this, all of the details of this, but it just felt a little sloppy. It felt a little bit like we've done really well so far. We can do anything. And then it
Yeah.
was like, well, can you?
Yeah, they're as bored as the viewers, maybe. I think that, and it's been one episode to be fair. But I do think it is funny. It's like, let's make up a lie. It's like they went through your bag and they voted you out of the game. Like you had an idol. that could be it. But the thing is, you've since bonded, right? And that's what was so amazing. Is like they overcame that like massive gap. They bridged all of that to be this alliance. So it's kind of hard to be like, but they did do that. It's like, well, you knew that when you got into bed with them to begin with. And like I do wonder how kind of public the bag. Like I think Cedric, someone in the X interview, I think mentioned about Carl. I mean, Shaheen going through Carl's bag. So that might be already kind of something that's been discussed and kind of like, that's fine. It's fine when people do things that we decide are fine in the deserving alliance. So David's probably been like, I've cleared it. It's gone to the council and I've cleared the bag thing was okay. But what else do they have? I do wonder if it's like, was this so much about like I agree it was a mistake, but I think it's a mistake maybe in a different way, like less of a loose end and maybe more just like of a bad read. Because I think if Carl's looking at Shaheen, like one of the things that makes Shaheen a threat to Carl is that what I find fun about this alliance is like they're mirror images of each other. Like David and Joe are like the Lagi Siva mirror images of each other, where they like actually are like, I actually will do the honor and integrity thing of for our alliance to the bitter end. And like I think Joe would genuinely go home for it. And maybe David, I think David maybe I don't know. Maybe he seems like really committed to the cause, but like Carl and Shaheen as the other kind of like two guys in this alliance are like until when? Like they're like the little like devil on the shoulder of each like the Sivalagi side. So I think that they should be wary of each other because it's like they are each other. So I think that's fun. But yeah, I think that we have to remember as well that like there was a close Siva 4 that was probably mostly David, Kyle, Camilla, and then like a Chrissy. And I do wonder if it's like, is it putting it out now and then not doing it, so leaving a loose end, or is it putting it out for the future, assuming he will choose Siva and just being like, let's think about this, let's be in talks about this for a time. Now, the issue I would have with that is I don't think that David will choose Siva. Everything at least we seem to know from him is like very set on this like Milkship alliance. But I do wonder if that's more what it is. It's not that they left a loose end, it's that they don't see David as a loose end. They think David will be with them, and that bad read is my criticism more than like you try to do it, didn't do it. Because for them it's like, okay, but it's still in motion. Let's think about it for the future. We'll circle back tomorrow.
Well, that's kind of, I think, what I mean though, where it's like, I think that if you go to David and you're like, hey, we're obviously super on board with the all the strong guys and how we're doing this. How sure are we about Shaheen? Because I'm just worried that he's not going to want to come with us. Like, I feel like, when I was at his camp, he went through my bag, and I just feel like he's a little bit shadier than the rest of us when it comes to the game. And he might be the one that's willing to cut us strong guys because maybe, and you can get all as insulting as you want. I mean, maybe he doesn't see himself as strong as us. You know what I mean? Like, we're out here performing better in competitions than he is. Maybe I don't remember how they're performing, but
Yeah, no,
like,
literally that did happen. He was on the bench singing the theme song while everyone else
right.
was competing. The other
So,
four
so
of the five-person Strong Alliance were all competing up there. So
yeah, so like
how
continue to
dare
feed
he,
into
by the
the
way?
ego of the strong guy players, and like,
Yeah,
and just
that should
start
be
planting
enough. He
seeds.
he folded before all of us in the challenge. Like, isn't that how we're deciding things? Just like we'll do it
Yeah.
on we'd literally do it in just a challenge order. Yeah.
And I think that, like, if you, and maybe he is doing that as well, and maybe he's just like not getting any response from that, and that's why he's going over the top and coming up with a lie as well. But like, the lie about the idol worries me because it's the kind of thing that David might inadvertently reveal. This isn't something that like needs to be hidden, but like, hey, we're worried about Shaheen because he might have an idol. To me, that's something that David, in the hopes of clearing things up, might just go to Shaheen and be like, hey, we've been hearing that you might have an idol. I just want to keep everything on the up and up. Like, what are you thinking? Do you have an idol? Like, that sort of thing. And Sheen's gonna be like, no, where did this come from? And like, there's things can get messy in that way. I think you, with a player like David, you just want to make sure that you are being clear about like how you're communicating to him and the ways that he might then relay that information to other people.
Yeah.
And so maybe it's not what I said. Maybe it's something different depending on how you think he's going to handle that information. But I think the lie in particular is dangerous because it's a lie. And because David, if he talks to Shaheen, can clear it up with Shaheen and make David trust Shaheen even more and start to be wary of you. Whereas if you tell him the truth or things that could be perceived as the truth, there's not a lot that Shaheen can do to dispute that. And now all of a sudden, even if they do talk, it's not like, oh, well, it's a lie, it's cleared up, don't worry about it anymore. It's still something. So that's part of why it worries me.
Well, they did say like he hung back so he could have an idol. Like they left
Right.
that plausible deniability. However, any ally who heard that would be like, why would I mean Camilla did it. So Camilla, to be fair, isn't
Mhm.
aligned with Shaheen. However, um that could make her a target of the group. So she's actually technically in a more vulnerable position if they are misreading David's priorities, which I think they are. And I also think it's like, okay, fine, you didn't lie about him, but if he were to hear that, it's like, oh, Camilla thinks you could have an idol because you hung back at the well. It's like, well, okay, yeah, actually, she is separately aligned with Shaheen in the kind of new Vula group that they made, not the stronger group. So that could break that connection. That could make her more vulnerable to being outside of the power group, even if she has individual other alliances with the people all in the power group, not just with Kyle. But yeah, I think that you, as an ally of Shaheen or someone who has the power to try and take out someone like Camilla, might be like, why would you assume the worst of me? Like, why are you starting rumors about me? Like, it's not a lie, but it's a weird assumption to make where I don't have an idol. So why would you even start that rumor? Why wouldn't you come to me as an ally to be like, hey, I noticed you hung back. Like, let's talk about it. Let's do something with this. But like, no, you just took it to someone else on like something incredibly vague and minor, which even might be a lie. To be fair, we don't know if he hung back at the well, and it's very very thin. So yeah, I don't like it. I think the issue is like if you can't do it without David, you better be reading David right. If you're reading David completely right and he's a vault, um, then I think it's better. But I think that you're not reading him right. As you're saying, there could be issues to just the way that he plays in that really kind of truthful way that are other issues. Like I think you just need to find another way around it. And I think Shaheen is a threat, but like Carl and Camilla have a lot of power as well. Like I don't think he's threatening enough right now to put as much kind of on the line for Shaheen. I think we kind of see where that goes and probably like create a coalition at a future point, with or without David, depending on how you can read what he'll do. But like, I don't think it's kind of necessary to start like dipping your toe into that right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just too early. And like I said, with the meta of Survivor in the new era often being cut down the tallest head, if you start that now at the final 12, that's a lot of heads that will be cut down, and you are a tall head yourself. So like, I
Yes.
think if you're a player like Kyle or Camilla, you want to delay that for a little while. You want to delay it for a bit so that you take down a lot of the smaller targets until you get to a place. As long as you're maintaining your ability to take the strike when you need to, it's much better to take it later than sooner, I think, in this particular position.
Yeah, which is literally the whole point of the alliance. So yeah, and it's working
Right.
really well. And we're commending it as annoying as it is in its various ways. For the people on the bottom, I think this is so interesting because of the way that the bottom can just kind of shuffle and how being at the top and the bottom of the bottom can be a, you're out next versus a game winning move. Now Marianne was like on the side of the power group in 42, but we know that Taku were really deciding a lot and they were protecting her. But I think she did a lot of good work there. I remember when she like set up for Rice and they were like, well, we can't target her now. Like she made things easy on herself and made those like small positioning moves, which I really enjoyed through 42, and had the covert protection of Taku as well. And if you're someone like maybe like a Star, you might be looking at that being a position. If you're someone like a Chrissy, like maybe that is your shot and maybe it's why you don't upend things, because if you can try and, it's not even passive, if you can defensively up your position to be like the closest to the power group when they eventually do crack, you'll definitely still be there and you can maximize on it, even though you're waiting for them to do it, which might seem passive. Again, you're contributing defensively to that. And that's how Marianne won the game. And that's the difference between being like a Chanel and a Marianne. And so that's very, very important here. And I think that some people are doing that really well. And I really want to commend Mary on this because I feel like Mary, like David is Mary's lifeline. I think that that's like a key connection, and David's very important. And I think what's so interesting is like we're gonna tell Cedric that the name is Shaheen, and like David backs Mary on that. He's like, well, to be fair, if he plays a shot in the dark, he won't have a vote. Okay, but then like who would go home? Shaheen should be like, but just because it's my name, it's not me. He can't say that because it's like, but Mary would go home, right? Like Mary should be the decoy. Mary for me makes sense in like the way that just deciding between Say and Mitch is going to be Cedric or Mary would be the thought. So the fact that firstly they're not even having that conversation because she's so not an option, and secondly she doesn't even become what should be like a clear decoy to Cedric, I think is hugely in her favor. The fact that she puts out, Shaheen's name, you're the last Lagi. It's like, okay, those aren't the dynamics even remotely, but sure, we'll give him that. It doesn't make sense. It's never going to happen, as we're saying. It kind of leads to like, maybe we'll talk about Shaheen, which is terrible. Like, don't put someone's name out there, especially for the people on the bottom. So the fact that Cedric doesn't vote for Mary, I think is really, really a positive for her and how she's like, really just attached herself to this group, which again can be the difference between a game winning and your next boot type of move. In a way that I think is really good. And we even see that if Cedric can wear anything from the group that he barely knew and Mary voting him out, maybe it's a little bit. I mean, it was never going to happen. There was nothing for him. But the worst thing that happened to him in this episode was that like Say did put a petty vote on him, and it did kind of start a conversation around Cedric. Like you see the way that the people on the bottom, just like Mitch is close with Charity, so he's left out. Now he's on the bottom. Now he's like mostly on the bottom, I have to say. Like all of that, I think, can contribute to the way that the bottom is ordered. And I think like Mary's winning that race, which honestly can be a race to winning the game, depending on what the majority decides to comfort
Yeah,
whether or not.
I agree. I mean, in terms of the vote thing, it actually can be like a pretty big like bomb onto someone's game where like if they don't handle it properly, like if Cedric comes back and he's like, "Who voted for me? I want to find out who this is." It's not just scary for the person who did vote for him. It's scary for anybody because who knows who he might suspect. And so now I didn't vote for Cedric, but now I have to talk to him and make sure he doesn't think it's me. And I feel less secure in my relationship with Cedric all of a sudden. I think that if you are in a situation like that, it is very important that you like shore up your relationships and you're like, I'm 100% sure that you did not do that. Even if you aren't sure, it's still, I think, a good thing to say that out loud. But yes, when it comes to Mary, I think that she's playing a very like scrappy game, and she's really managed to like claw her way to survival at every opportunity. And I think that speaks a lot to like her game sense. I think like edit wise, I feel like she's kind of disappeared into the fold a little bit over the last couple of episodes after some really, really visible episodes in the pre-merge. So I'm not sure what that means for her like long term in the edit. I don't think she's out of it, but I could definitely see her being a winner candidate. I think that she is definitely primed to be in a position to potentially uh, be the person that benefits from the big group cannibalizing,
Yeah.
because she is the only person left who she has nobody from her tribe is left. So like even people like Star or Chrissy, they have connections to other power players, which makes them dangerous to the other power players. If I want to weaken David and Kyle, I might take Chrissy out, being like, "Hey, she's not on our alliance, right? So it's fine to
Hmm.
take Chrissy out." In the hopes that I'm now taking a number away from one of them, and that doesn't hurt theoretically Mary as much because she doesn't have as much of a visible connection to anyone else. It also makes her the easiest to take out if they don't want to offend anyone. But I think, as you mentioned, she's done a good job of like ingratiating herself enough that it's like, well, I don't want this to happen, and so it makes it less easy, which is very important for a position like that.
Yeah, I mean, look at the way that Dave is protecting her. Again, more covertly. They have a very mutually beneficial relationship, but I don't think it's as obvious because it's not on those tribal lines. Like, the fact that David doesn't have Mary get up after that conversation and say to Shaheen, like, we'll tell Cedric it's Mary. It's not going to be your name. Don't worry about it. I know that it's not about, like, we don't need your name out there at all. Of course, like, if he plays the show in the dark, it's whatever, but, like, he probably doesn't have an idol. But, like, even if it's no risk to you, we don't need your name out there. We don't need you to be the one that people target. We're not even starting that conversation. I'll tell Cedric that it's Mary. He doesn't do that. He's like, yeah, no. If he plays the show in the dark, then he'd be there are no votes. It's like, okay, but just tell me then that the target would be Mary and not me. And I don't know, maybe it would be Shaheen, and he's the other name now spoken about. That's the conversation we're having, which we're saying is like incredibly bad for the people on top. Like, yeah, if Cedric hits a shot in the dark, vote out Mary. Would they? I don't know. So that's very good for Mary and kind of concerning for the whole majority because I don't think that's the right decision. Maybe not for David. Like that is a good ally for David, but yeah, no, I think David should probably keep the alliance intact that he's like the architect of and that is like mostly benefiting from. And but even then, I see maybe Mary is gaining more from this because that is like some pretty hardcore defense, more than she's giving to David as a number, even though that is helpful to him. She's really being protected, and I think that is to her credit. She's done very very well with that. Yeah, because like getting your name out there is not a good thing, and that's what Say does to Cedric here. And I feel like it was funny to blame it on Charity because Charity votes for Say saying she votes for Charity, so that completely changes. You know what? Like it should be like she should have put it on someone who technically voted for her. Am I right about this? Yes, because she's saying it's yes. No, she voted for Charity, she's saying she voted for
Mhm.
Charity. So she's okay. Can you help me with this?
What you're saying is that by her saying she voted for charity, like that's she's like not accounting, like the votes
Yeah,
aren't there. Somebody, so
exactly.
theoretically,
Then
somebody that voted for charity is lying because those numbers aren't matching up,
exactly
and
those
so
numbers aren't
charity
right.
obviously couldn't have voted for charity. Therefore, charity is not lying, or you can't misrepresent charity's vote because she couldn't have voted for herself, and you
Yes.
know that one of the charity votes is the one that's lying.
Okay, that's it.
But that does
Thank you so
require
much.
an amount of cognizance of like where all the votes were that
Of
I'm
13
not
people.
sure all the players
Yes.
have.
Okay, thank you. It is it. She needs to put the blame on someone who voted for Charity because she's saying she voted for Charity, so those should be the swap votes. Okay, thank you so much. My brain malfunction, but she's putting it on Charity, and Charity couldn't vote for Charity. We got there in the end. Mostly, thank you to Taran, 100% due to Taran. Thank you, Taran. But yeah, so that I mean, for 13 votes you can't, and that's one of the mass vote issues here. Yeah, I mean, and say in general. Say probably has a little bit more to wear than Cedric. Like Say made a lot of enemies even on the other tribes in a way that Cedric I feel didn't. Say also had the best possible out in having Mitch. Like if anyone else was gonna go, it probably could be Mitch. So that was kind of an interesting thing for me. Although I do think that like it made so much sense to vote out Say because also they're probably gonna play their shot in the dark. And the fact that Mitch can like shore up blocking her vote so she doesn't play a shot in the dark that makes it like just a sure thing. Although to be fair, if she plays the shot in the dark, they just vote out the other one. Does it really matter? My God, they had it locked up. I mean, what did you think between Say and Mitch's options?
I mean, the thing is, if I am Joe and Eva and I'm like, in a position of power, I would probably lean toward voting out Say, depending on how I saw like relationships. Like Mitch is a more dangerous player because he's better in challenges and he's got better social connections theoretically. The tricky part is, does he have good enough social connections where he becomes threatening? Like, are other people going to pick him up as a number? If so, then maybe I do want to take out Mitch over Say. If I feel like the people who would pick Mitch up as a number would be me, or something, then keeping Mitch in is better because why bother ever voting out Say? Like Say's the kind of player that you might leave around and take a bigger shot, whereas you can't leave Mitch around quite as much because he's too likable, and if he makes to the end, he might win, and he's too good at challenges, so that you can't like, if it's near the end game, you can't like leave him around because he might win too many immunities, and so that provides a viable deterrent to betraying you. The trick to that is that, again, you need to make sure that if Mitch does go to somebody, or if somebody tries to pick Mitch up, you're that person and not, say, Shaheen, who he did seem to have a decent connection with earlier in the episode. So I think it really just depends on how you see each player in the game, but I do think there's reasons to go in either direction.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like he's such a social threat. It's like the man has no allies. Like you voted out his closest allies. He was on the other side of it. Otherwise, unanimous vote. I think that makes him kind of an open target, but like he's more workable if someone wants him and it's then about who picks him up. I do understand that, but I do think that they do a good job of just like presenting the next threat, and both Say and Mitch do work for that. About like let's not all break on each other. We have people on the bottom that we need to take out who are like legitimate targets, because if we take out Mitch, then Say is Say. She's always so extreme, and we need to get rid of her. Just, I mean, she could float through the end just to be a goat, but it's very, very unlikely. So she's just like such a nuisance to us, so we have to take her out. And then, like, if we take her out, then Mitch is always going to have all these other threatening things that we can paint, that we can take him out. And, like, if he floats to the end, he might win, but he's probably even less likely to float to the end. Neither of them are. So they're both kind of good fodder to keep your alliance intact. So I think kind of like either one is probably fine. I think Say's been more on the bottom. Say has openly said Eva's name. So for sure, like Eva
Exactly.
being there, will want to do that. Say's much more likely to find an idol. Like Say gets things done. So I think I'd always take out Say. I totally get it. But I mean, like, yeah, two EV options, I think, for the people on the top. I do think that Mitch did well here to use the blocker vote. Um, just because if you're worried about that, like that could tip the scales, and like, but Mitch has a blocker vote. God only knows what Mitch could do with the blocker vote with, again, no allies, but that's like now threatening. We've seen people burn extra votes just to not, maybe saw like what Maria burned an extra vote just to not be a target at the merge. So I think it was good to burn it. As he said, it was to build trust. He is gone if a shot in the dark is hit. So I mean, she can't play a shot in the dark, which she clearly would have done. So it gives him that like out on the 1 and 6, and he's just never gonna be able to do anything else with the blocker vote. So I think it was a good use of the blocker vote. And I think that tips the scales, because if it's so marginal and there's arguments for both, him having the blocker vote might be the reason you target him over Say. And if he's giving that away and saving the shot in the dark, I think he actually gained a little bit from this, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a couple other options you have, and I'm not sure if they were viable here. It really depends on the person you're talking to, but like he could have, instead of saying "I'll burn this," he could have said, "Hey, if you keep me, I'll use this to your benefit. I'll work with you. You will have essentially me and my block of vote." Or you could take it even a step further and say, "Hey, I will give you my block of vote right now,
Yeah.
and then you will have it, and nobody will even know that you have it. They'll still think I have it, or we can publicly say that you have it. Whatever whatever you want. This is a show of good faith. I'm no longer as much of a threat because I no longer have this block of vote, and now you have the ability to use it to your advantage at some point in the future." And that's another option. I think the danger with those is that you now present as a threat even more. The fact that you even thought to do that, the fact that you're willing to do something like that, if I'm in Joe's position, I'm going to start to worry. Like, the fact, this is like, Dr. Will is a very famous Big Brother player. Classic
Yes,
tenet
I
of his
watched Dondi.
strategy.
Yeah.
He was on Dondi, yeah. Classic tenet of his strategy, which he did use on Dondi slightly, though it wasn't very effective there, is he is such a known quantity, but he will often like just make any deal he can with somebody. The second you say yes to him, he's the devil on your shoulder. He now has leverage on the fact that you've said yes to him. The fact that you agreed to a deal with somebody outside of your alliance, somebody that you're not supposed to make a deal with, the fact that you now hold his block a vote or have even made any kind of deal with him is now leverage that a player like that can use against you. Hey, he made a deal with me, right? Like, he took my block a vote or whatever the case may be. And so, there's always a lot of danger involved in all of that kind of stuff, but it is an option to think about, again, depending on like who you're talking to. Ultimately, I think this was the right call here because it works. But just to call that out, because it's something that I thought about.
Well, there's a few things. The first thing is like, yeah, as you're saying, that's like a strategic thing to do. I'm giving you my blocker vote. It's like, we're not strategic here. Okay, Mitch did the thing that the moral people should do. He burned his advantages. No advantages ever, except for the people in power. They
Exactly.
can have advantages when we know about them, and they can win challenges and they can be strong. So Mitch did the moral thing as seen by the moralizers. So I think that that's good. The second thing is he made Say very vulnerable. Now, again, if she does have her shot in the dark and it hits, it only really matters to Mitch, who at that point will go home. But we've seen before when you don't have a vote, it actually makes you a very vulnerable target. So it's more just like we have a clear runway. We're never even going to have to revote. This person is going home, especially Say, who has had trinkets in the past. Like we're really just like we have the free shot at her. I think making her really, really vulnerable was good as well. And yeah, I think for himself, being able to to like have her not play the shot in the dark helps him the most. And I think that if he gives it away, there is the possibility that the moral people are like, but because Mitch is such a threat and we don't like that, they will block his shot in the dark in the future. Like I think that having the risk out there like could actually really hurt him. So the fact that he gains a shot in the dark not being played against him going home on the revote, and then I wouldn't want to have the opportunity to play a shot in the dark. If I'm Mitch there, like I'm throwing a vote. So just being able to have like not have to do that, be able to be super, super communal. And they might have counter split. I can't have thought of the number. They can do that. They could do like a 3-1 in case he throws a 1. But I would definitely be throwing a vote if she could play her shot in the dark. And she doesn't have to. So I think that on that alone, like he gains the most. But I mean, not good either way. Like it's a tough spot for Mitch probably.
Well, the bottom line is that this block a vote is unlikely ever going to be more useful to him than this moment. Especially given his position in the game and the timing of the game, like the block of vote is most valuable on the smallest possible tribe. And even in this spot, it's still not enough for him to make any kind of dent in the numbers. So being able to use it to guarantee that you don't have to face a 1 in 6 shot of a shot in the dark, and also maybe get some social credit and make sure the votes go in that direction in the first place, is a lot more use out of this than he was likely ever going to get anyway.
Definitely. Yeah, he needs like block 10 votes, which is something actually Australian Survivor has done many times. So that would be good. That twist would be great. If he could have that to win a challenge to be the only voter. Horrible twist. Wonderful for Mitch. That's pretty much all we have from this episode. We did well with 2 sleepier votes. I wanted to know what your thoughts have been. Did you have any like kind of other major thoughts, given that you have mostly been like streaming, for like any podcast thoughts that you can give here on like some of the other stuff? Because the pre-merge was finicky. Like we came in every week, just I actually like monkey board this because I'm like every week I have to come on and talk about the rules at length and talk about these finicky little, and I did multiple prisoners dilemmas, not even just one, plural prisoners dilemmas, and now we're here and I'm like sleepy vote. So there's maybe Goldilocks us a little bit. But did you have any like major thoughts on this pre-merge of mostly two Vula members who were taken out in this episode?
I mean, I did say on stream after the Justin vote that I needed to talk to you about it.
Yeah, and the funny thing was
thoughts.
that was an episode where I actually wasn't meant to podcast that week because I had my own stuff going on, and then we roped in Puya to just come on because I was podcasting with him about Australian Survivor because I was like, I saw the bat signal. I was like, I should really need to talk about this episode. And that was true of every pre-merge episode. Yeah, not as much true here, but definitely like we had so much to figure out then, and we got nowhere. I don't think we got anywhere, but we talked about it definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I had opinions, but honestly, I don't remember.
I don't remember them. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure my thought process was like, it's silly how they did it because of how redundant it was. Like, why bother doing revotes
Yeah, the
if it
revote
only
was.
ever matters how Cedric voted in the first
Yes, that
place.
is true. Yeah,
Yeah.
we did get there. Um, yeah, I mean, it changed my whole thinking of like the revote. Like I had been like the revote because my brother has not started the season, and I'm like, I really have needed you this season, and he's like, I have too much Survivor on at the moment. So I'm like, you do have too much Survivor on. Anyway, we talked about it, but I'm like, we agreed that the 47 revote rules were correct, and now I've like changed my stance on it because I'm like, I think it's making it too tricky and like there's so many issues otherwise, but I'm like kind of wary to change my stance. I'm like, will he agree with this when he watches the season? That I feel like I've like changed like a religious belief. I've been converted back to the old revote rules. Like, is that okay? And I feel like I need his permission on that. So I still don't know where I stand on things, but certainly enough situations came up that my thinking has changed in a row through a pre-merge that had barely one majority vote. So yeah.
I mean, I think the main thing for me is that it just should be laid out clearly ahead of time. That the
Yes.
players should know exactly how things work so that they can plan accordingly. Like, this is another side tangent, but I watch a lot of competition climbing, and there's a lot of different rule changes that happen. There's been a recent rule change with how bouldering is scored. That if you applied the new way of scoring, it would change results of like previous competitions, that like this person that got gold might have gotten bronze instead. And like but like the thing is that if you know ahead of time that that's how it's scored, even if there's nothing you can do about it, at the very least you know that's what you've got coming in, as opposed to like playing a competition thinking it's scored one way and then they change the rules right before the finish and it's like, no, actually we scored it a different way. Is just like they should know exactly how this works before the season even starts.
Yeah.
This is how tiebreak rules will work in every given scenario, and quite frankly, we should know too. But what are you gonna do?
Yeah, like those newer players will also study it at length. We have Australian Survivor players who have never heard of what rocks is, but the newer players will know every permutation. But I completely agree with you. It's like if you were to draft the grenade and then also draft the winner, but then the final two people are the other finalists tie. What is it? Is it average draft? Like, these are the questions I had, Tara. This is literally my point. I'm so vindicated. Thank you so much, finicky New Era Survivor, for vindicating me at every single turn. Now, Taran, you aren't one of my recap bitches on Australian Survivor, which is what I call the guys in a loving way. Every week I came onto the Australian Survivor recap with both Puya and Chappelle at separate times, and I was like, at the very end of the podcast, we would do a segment every week where I was like, do you want to gloat about the draft? Because what happened was, first, obviously, I had the grenade, so at the end I'd be like, I think at one point I even made up a little jingle. You can gloat that I had the grenade, and then you can gloat that when Justin was voted out, I was like mathematically taken out of winning, not faster than Puya in 41, but pretty damn fast. And then when Thomas was taken out, I did get the historically worst draft team in draft history. Would you like now to gloat at this time in the podcast?
I don't really think like I feel like gloating over someone's failure doesn't make a lot of sense if I haven't succeeded yet.
Oh.
I feel like if I'm gonna gloat, it should be if Shaheen wins. You know what I mean? Which I feel okay about right now.
Who's your
I feel
second?
like
You had
I
Charity,
have Star,
Shaheen, and
Star,
Star.
and
Oh, I
Charity.
love Star. Yeah.
I feel like Star might make Final Three. I'm not sure she has like a winner edit right now, but
Because
I would
people
love
don't
it if
get
she did.
Star, even though she's the best, and they won't vote. They'll be wrong, but they don't get her.
Yeah.
They've never got her. I get Star. You know.
When she was like, I'm gonna make Final Three, I was like, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the fact that you won't gloat shows you're very different from Pooh and Chappelle, and I think does decide the argument we've been having of who the heroes and villains, much like the Avengers are in the draft, and people have like kind of decided people were between you and Puya for hero and villain. I said that you, Asia, Liana were the heroes, and me, Puya, Chappelle were the villains. And I think you just proved that. Like, you won't gloat even though I had a terrible team. Like, it doesn't, you haven't won, sure, but you did a lot better than me. Everyone did better than
Mm.
me. It was historically terrible, which is so upsetting, Taryn, because clearly there is a strong man alliance that is just I literally messaged our draft chat and I was like, oh, this is the season with the strong man alliance. Like, finally it happened. I've been waiting for 8 seasons. And I
You
don't have
lost
any of the
faith.
strong men.
Yeah.
In any other draft, I have Dave. I did want Carl, to be fair. I didn't get Carl, but I wanted David. In another, I wanted Carl. I didn't want David. In another season, I have David, Kyle, and Joe. Right? Like, that's how I draft. This is the season.
Mm.
It's so unfair. I'm pretty mad about it.
Listen, you got bullied out of it.
Literally.
Made
Made
fun of
me
you enough
work.
that you stopped your strategy right
Yeah, people
before it
were
was
so
effective.
mean about it. And I was like, firstly, I was like, people can win out. And then Rachel did and won me the draft on that. And then I was like, well, now I can have a little bit of fun. So I didn't go with my usual thing. I went on pure
Mm.
vibes, which was stupid. I didn't consider physicality, even though in hindsight, I didn't look at the photos. In hindsight, Vula were entirely unmatched for this game. I picked too many Vulas. Two of three were Vula. Regret. And then yeah, in another draft, I have at least two of David, Carl, Joe. Yeah, the whole alliance that is currently running the
I
game
mean,
with
if it
that as
helps,
the
if I win with Shaheen, it's because
Shaheen.
he was once on a podcast where he was a judge for hire and said that one of the people on the podcast should have to eat a pencil. So,
What?
yeah.
Yeah, I never understood that. When you made that reference, I think I googled it because I was like, "What? Can you explain it to me now? What was the reference and what was it? I don't remember what anything happened here."
I listened to a podcast, formerly known as the F Face podcast. Fill in the blank. Rebranded to the Regulation podcast after the sale of or the dismantling of Rooster Teeth. Which has Gavin Free of the Slow Mo Guys, Jeff Ramsey, formerly of Rooster Teeth and Achievement Hunter, and a friend of mine, Andrew Panton, who's a big fan of Survivor. Andrew is full of what they call burger confidence, meaning he thinks that he can make bets about like how many burgers he can eat, and he vastly overestimates the amount of burgers he can eat and or the amounts of things that he can do in bets. He made a bet that if something didn't happen or if he didn't do a thing, it might have been the burgers, he would eat a pencil. And he, of course, lost the bet and said, I don't want to eat the pencil. And they took him to court. They were going to do a whole mock trial for like why he should have to eat the pencil. And he had defenses planned. And the other guys went onto hireajudge.com or something along those lines to get some like adjudicators and like lawyers to
And
make
Shaheen
cases.
is
Shaheen
in
was one of those
yeah
people.
in debate, right?
And he was also, I think, a fan of the podcast at the time. And so they had some audio from him that they played on the podcast recently. And Andrew had reached out to me to say, hey, you'll never guess, but there's a judge in the pencil case that's on Survivor this season. I was like, I have to have him on my team.
Oh my god, does
Um,
Puya know that's why?
I don't know if I've talked to Puya specifically about it, but I mean, I was so here's what happened on the draft is that I didn't really think I would get Shaheen. I thought that like somebody else would pick Shaheen. He seemed like a good like
Yeah,
big top consensus pick anyway.
yeah.
And I was like, I'm just gonna jump in with some like snippets about like, man, I trust his judgment. Like I was just gonna make some quips. But then all of a sudden I was first pick and I was like, I guess I'm picking Shaheen then. And then the dreaded question comes from Rob. Why are you picking Shaheen, Taran? And I have no idea. I barely looked at these people's things.
Yes, yes.
And so now all of a sudden I'm trying to make my vague jokes, but that's not going to play for a reason to pick the very first person off the draft board.
No, we need way more than
And
that.
so I start to flounder, and I crack, and I mention a pencil reference, and then nobody responds to it.
I googled it after. I didn't know what you meant. Google did not take me here, by the way. I don't know why Google did.
This is great because Andrew then messaged me after he was like, I watched your draft, and that was the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. Can I please play a clip of this on the next podcast?
And they
And
did.
so he played it for Jeff and Gavin, and they were cracking up about how I F-faced myself by making jokes that nobody laughed at.
I
that were
googled
references to
it.
their podcast.
Didn't know what you meant. I swear to God, I googled it. I was like, pencil eating. I swear I remember googling it. Okay, so much here. Firstly, the whole story you described is kind of like a parody of someone describing podcast culture, like how in the
Yeah.
weeds an episode there was. It's like I don't know what's going on, but then if you would also then play the 15-minute draft conversation we had before this, same thing. You could do that on their podcast, and I'm sure when they played the podcast, the draft probably had the same like what is happening here because the lore is so great.
Mm-hmm.
That is incredible. See, this is why I give you first pick because you're a hero. Because then something like this happens, it screwed over Puya. That's just was like a fun little bonus. I wonder if Puya understands why this happened. He may never talk to me again because obviously it's my fault as the villain. But like, That is absolutely incredible. But in a different world, I have Shaheen because that's how I draft. I draft Shaheen, Joe, Kyle, David. Literally, that's it.
If
That
it
was it.
helps, I think if you are evil, you're like lawful evil.
Yeah, I don't know enough about all of that. But I think I said
Uh,
anti-hero.
well, like lawful evil is like evil, but like bureaucratic, more about the rules, more about like figuring out like the details of
Yeah,
things.
okay.
And
That
then
seems
probably
very right.
Chappelle is probably chaotic evil,
Yes, no
and
question.
then Puya is probably more neutral evil.
He's not gonna like that because he's been complaining recently that every time we try and like fit everyone into a group, we just end up just like shoving Puya into the last slot. Even though I agree with you that he is neutral evil, it is very, very, very funny that you would say this now because it's been an ongoing issue through the Australian Survivor podcast. I do agree. I think the funny thing about that was that when I talked about it with Puya, first I was like, how can I be the villain? Because I'm against the villains. Like, you know, how we're infighting. That's our civil war. They're always mean to
Mm.
me. And then I came out of that podcast and I asked Peter, my loving husband, 12 years together tomorrow, a life spent together, a life built together, the person who loves and knows me more than anyone in the world. And I asked him, and he was like, you're a villain. What do you like? You think you can come in there talking about how you're the best all the time and not be a villain? And then he agreed, you and Asia and Liana were the heroes. And I was like, I want a divorce. And that was that conversation. So yeah, I mean, incredible. The draft lore. And if I hadn't given you first pick, that wouldn't have happened. So it all happened as it was meant to, including me drafting the worst draft team in draft history
Mm.
with no strong guys. Justin
Yeah.
seems strong. I thought he might be fueled by the power of pizza. It wasn't really Justin's fault. I don't blame Justin at all. He did apologize. I was like, it's not your fault. It's production's fault. They made Vula untenable. What was the point? Anyway, should we get to the Chisy?
Let's do it.
Let's do that. Take it away, Jacob Sager Weinstein and MC Color.
1, 2, 3. 1, 1, 1, 3, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. It's getting kind of chizzy. 3, 2, 1.
Now, this week, I did remember to make a slideshow at the very last minute when Taran was already in the stream, and I was already late. My apologies. Here's the Chisy charts. Now, Cedric and Say, gone too soon. Leading the Chisy at different times. Cedric left on 11 points, Say on 9. Our fallen soldiers. Very upsetting. Taran, who are you giving points to this week?
Oof, it's a good question. It's a very difficult one because there were two different tribals. And I don't feel like anybody really like stood out strategically because they were both pretty straightforward votes.
Yeah.
I'm tempted to give David at least a point just for the dominant challenge performance that I was very impressed by. Although strategically, I'm not sure how like good that is long term for his game.
In this group, it's fine, right? He's allowed to be good at challenges, unlike Mitch. So
Yes, exactly. I definitely am looking at somebody like Mary, who I think did well in a not great position. And I'd also maybe look at Mitch for the use of the block of vote and surviving this position. I think I like that, like, you know, we got content from Shaheen that was like, I'm trusting in the relationships that I have. He's ultimately proven right, but the fact that he's in danger at all and doesn't seem to know it, I don't think is a good thing if I'm not looking at the edit. So I think maybe I just go in this direction. I go something like Mitch, Mary, David.
okay. I see that. I definitely think that the individual moves we've spoken about from this episode, we like that Mary is at the top of the people on the bottom and how well she's done that defensively. We like that Mitch played the vote block. I don't know if you can give 3 points to someone who was like the other option. Like if he's in Cedric's spot, he's gone. You know, like he's second. He just like he gets lucky by having this shield of Say, who just was like that much more of a target for reasons that are very valid in terms of Say, like what Say is doing, not even compared to what like Mitch is doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, I think the way I'm thinking about it is that like he was left on the outside of the vote previously. He's a heavy contender to be voted out this week, and I think does a good enough job to keep himself off the chopping block by like actively playing his block of vote in the way that he does. I also like what Mary did. I feel like I just saw less of it, so it's harder to know how much of it was like, you know, her choice and what exactly she was doing that was good. But I assume that she was doing good things because of the result. And yeah, just in general, like there's just not a lot I think to credit otherwise. But I'm interested to hear what you think.
I mean, the fact that you're open to even hearing my suggestions is why you are a hero here compared to what like someone like Puya will do. I feel like, are you lawful good? And then I feel like Asia may be neutral good, and then Liana I think is chaotic good.
Hmm.
Have I worked that out?
I think that's possible. I think I also like. I think I am lawful good, but I think I might sometimes present as chaotic good, especially in the draft when I'm picking on pet peeves and I'm,
That
you
is
know,
true.
yeah.
People don't understand. I mean, it definitely breaks my brain, so maybe we aren't, connected on that one. But look, okay, I see your points. I think it's fine. I think for me, I'm only going to go with the people in the Milkship Alliance, even though I like what Mary's doing on the side, and that should be
Mhm.
kind of be the one thing that's getting a Chisy point just for like good, like small move. I mean, it's the most she can do. I'm not like criticizing it in any way. I'm just saying that like even then, it's still like holding on defensively to the big group. I'd like to see how that plays out further and give her points for that kind of like in the future when it like pans out. At the moment, I kind of feel like I can only give to the Milk Chip Alliance because it's so dominant, and I feel
Mhm.
like they need to be racking up points here. Like the fact that like David, Joe, Shaheen are like so low on points, like they're completely dominating. So I feel like I need to up those points. So I'm giving 3 to David. David needs to get points for the fact that this alliance fully helps him in a different world. Like if we are looking at like very old school type merge boots, like it always is a David. He looks like Gaston. So I think that the fact that he's protected here and actually in a powerful position, the fact that Carl won't do anything, Carl and Camilla, without going to him, he has so much power. The fact that Mary's power that we're talking about crediting is through David is just he has an enormous amount of power. It might be annoying people, but it's certainly true. So I'm giving him 3 points. Then I'm looking at the points. Like I feel like it's kind of unfortunate that Shaheen, who's also a part of this, has 2 points. And I think that while he was left out of not left out of, he was outvoted in the one pre-merge tribal he went to. He was in a good spot on the original Lagi. He's in a good spot here, but I can't give him points when he's like the one really being looked at out of the group. So I can't give to Shaheen. Carl's certainly got enough from this alliance, and we don't love the way that he went about this vote either. As well, much as he made the right decision, we thought it was messy that he got there. The destination was good, the journey was bad. So not Carl. I'm gonna end up then probably giving my votes to the rest of this strong person alliance. I'm gonna give 2 votes to Eva, who does have a public idol, and again, like in a different world, maybe she is targeted and isn't. So I mean, obviously David and Joe are immune here and can't be targeted, but the intention is never going to be there. There's so much power. So Eva's vulnerable technically, has an idol. We're like talking about should they ever come for her, and it's like no, they shouldn't because she's amassed that level of power and control. And I have to give 2 points to that. So I'm giving 2 points to Eva, and then I'm going to give a point, I think, to Joe. Yeah. He's at the center of everything. He as well could be a target. He's immune, true. No one's looking at Joe. No one's looking at them at all. We're talking about Say or Mitch. And we're probably right to because they're so depowered. And I have to just credit the people at the top of that for as long as they maintain that power. I'll probably keep giving them points. At the point where they're cracking and someone like Mary is benefiting to her complete credit because she's earned that, Mary will get points. But those are my points for now. And I think, yeah, I think that's all I can kind of give. So it does kind of put, David up to what, like a 7, Joe up to 4, Eva up to 8, Mary up to, did you give Mary 2 points? Mary up to 5.
Yes.
And then actually had no points. So he's on 3 points. And I think, will Mitch like that? I think Mitch only knows about the fishy. He complains about the fishy. Well, he got 3 points. That also his first 3 points. Maybe don't tell Mitch about the Chisy. And that is where we're currently at with the Chisy. Taran, thank you so much. We got as much as physically possible, I think, out of this episode. I think we did well.
Yeah. I think we got a lot out of it. So
This
happy
was
to be
fun.
here.
To learn about the draft lore and what you were doing weeks after, it settles my OCD because I did Google it and I had to just let it go. But I'm really, really glad I got to.
If you
learn.
want, I can send you the clip from their podcast so you can
I'd
listen to
love
them
that.
laugh at me.
Oh, I'd love that. Please. And give me, yes, I would, yes, very, very, very interested. Taran, thank you so much. Where can people find you and your stream about Survivor and everything that you've got going on?
Yes, Twitch and YouTube, Taran Armstrong. I'm watching the episodes live, so basically I'm just streaming while the episode's on. I can't show the episode. I will occasionally show you where I am in the episode. But if you're watching it live and you want to watch it with other people, sometimes you don't even have to listen to me. You can just be in the chat and just hang out there. It's like a pretty cool place to be. So we also run predictions about like who's going to win immunity, when is the commercial going to come, stuff like that. It's a good time, so you can come and hang out over there. You can also watch after the fact if you want. The streams are saved on YouTube now. I do other stuff on there, and I talk about scripted shows, and I do all kinds of fun stuff elsewhere, so you can find all that. If you
Were you guys enjoying the challenge segment? Did that work for you? The very new era meta. I mean, they packed in like an overload. I do love meta things, believe me. I grew up on Community and Scrubs, but was that working for you? All of the little challenge gimmicks they were doing,
like
yeah, all of that with Shaheen, and then like the apply now. Like there was so much of it.
I really liked the music stuff from Shaheen. When Jeff did the apply now, I was like, okay, they're really getting meta with this.
Yeah.
But it didn't go too far. I still enjoyed it. I still had a good time.
It's nice when it feels like Jeff is having fun. I think it probably maybe annoyed some people because it was so much around the challenge strength of the strong challenge people, which it feels like is really kind of blocking up the game in a moralistic way that people hate. But this was the most fun we could have with that challenge strength kind of aspect of it. So I enjoyed it. It's, maybe the most enjoyable part of the episode, which is not the best from a challenge perspective, which I usually care less about. But anyway, follow me at Shannon Gates, WeKnowGlobalSurvivor.com for all of this. Next week I will have Teresa talking about the episode 8, and then I'm going away for 3 weeks. So no one's allowed to do any strategy while I'm gone. The Milkship Alliance, you better block it up, take it down to the end. I don't want anyone flipping because I don't want to have FOMO missing it while I'm in Europe and the UK. So just saying that. But yeah, we're covering Australian Survivor. Finale week is happening, episode 23 with Puya. And then I can say this now as well. The finale recap with Mike usually will have special guests. The aforementioned villains of Chappelle and Puya will be coming back to talk about the whole finale. We're going to do that live Monday night ET, probably around 9:30 ET, and then Australia time that's 11:30 a.m. on a Tuesday. So try and like take a sneaky early lunch break maybe, so you can hang out in the chat with us to talk about the finale feedback show. I will have Mark and Eden to talk about that. We'll have exit interviews already talking about the deep dive. So yeah, a lot of content coming your way for all of that. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Taran, for joining me in our seasonal tradition. Thank you to our team behind the scenes, and I will see you next time. Bye.
This is RHAP. We know reality TV.